Chapter 106 Gotham's Longjong Strategy, Part 1. What I'm saying is, that's it. Just as you can see, everyone knows what I used to do. On the counter of a bar, on the screen of an old television, Roy Brown pulls a violin case out from under the table and places it on the table, then clicks open the lid to reveal a gun. I'm from Chicago, yes, I used to be a mob boss there, a member of the mafia, as you know them. This is my weapon. See it? This pretty little thing, you call it a typewriter, but I like to call it Huff. What do you think this place is? What do you think I'm doing right now? Do you think I should be sitting in the mayor's office drinking tea? Let me tell you, this is not a threat. I was born and raised in Chicago, as were my father and grandfather. Back then, they said this place would become the next gold mountain. Many people came here all with dreams of getting rich. There were many big companies and big machines running around the clock. But when those people left, they left behind a fire and a mess. After Prohibition, what did my hometown leave behind? A complete mess. Riots are rampant. Everyone is in danger. What can we do? We must take up arms to defend ourselves. So you say, oh, Chicago is rife with gangs. It's a hellhole. I'm going to tell you now, it is hell. A hell that can devour you bastards alive. When those immigrants were killing people with guns here, the governor would just tell everyone to calm down. After gang problems became rampant, the police department? Ha! You still have the nerve to mention that. I'd like to ask you, where does the police department's funding go? Why does Chicago have the largest police training school in the entire East Coast? Yet not a single new police officer wants to stay here. Can you believe it? A year ago, there was only one gun for every 3 police officers in Chicago, and some support staff could only protect themselves with batons. This is what you call the pacification law? Why do those damn public housing streets exist? Because there are too many unemployed people. Why are they unemployed? Who's to blame for the economic problems? What have those fat pigs sitting on Capitol Hill done? They've left Chicagoans to fend for themselves. That's all. Now you're issuing telegrams and statements condemning Gotham for letting a mob boss be mayor. I'm telling you, I will be the best mayor here. Because I'm a member of a gang, if you don't solve our financial problems, then we'll solve them ourselves. We'll do whatever we want. I know some people say Gotham is worse than Chicago. Oh, and who else? Miami? Brookhaven? Imperial City. Yes, in their eyes, we eastern cities are nothing but a pile of dog shit. But they just stand there and watch this pile of dog shit being placed in front of them. Have we received any help from them? Roy pulled the Chicago typewriter out of its case and slammed it on the table, saying, "Don't expect me to listen to your nonsense, your talk about being a good boy. Go tell that to the people on the West Coast. This is the state of the East. There's only one thing I need to do here. Grab a gun, kill everyone who stands in my way, and then lead everyone to get rich. I don't care if they're gangsters or anyone else." After the speech ended, the TV screen on the bar flickered twice. The bartender patted the TV and said, "Well, looks like that old guy's broken again." The guests grumbled a few times in dissatisfaction. A burly black man, holding a wine glass, sat down at the bar and said, "Looks like the new mayor isn't so bad. He's a tough guy." He said what I was thinking. I was born in Gotham, yes, just 2 blocks away. You know, our boss took me out once before. Where was it again? Oh right, Metropolis. When people heard I was from Gotham, they acted like they'd seen something dirty. To be honest, this mayor is quite special. The one who used to sit in the mayor's office would just cower like a turtle when faced with the rebukes of reporters. Then he let out a cold laugh and said, "And then he died. In a car accident a little over a month ago. Oh, it's him. I don't even remember his name, but I've heard he's the 2nd longest living mayor in Gotham City. I think this one will definitely break the record. He's the Godfather's godson and much better than those spineless mayors." The black man also said, "He has a point. Whether it's Gotham or Chicago, this is what this godforsaken place was like before we were born. We live here and want to make more money. What's wrong with that? All they do is call us bastards. If I could be like those people in the metropolis, studying from a young age, going to university, graduating in a suit and tie, and sitting in an air-conditioned office, I'd have to be crazy to want to be a gangster and get shot." He was just saying that. Another black man walked over, ordered a drink, and said, "Do you think he can actually become a mayor and lead all the gangs to make money? What kind of mayor would do that? Even if those reporters don't tear him apart with their insults, the state government won't agree to it. I don't ask him to make money for us. I just hope he won't be like those mayors of the past. constantly coming up with some kind of civilized city regulation or anti-gang law, and then nagging about it all the time. What kind of anti-gang law is this? Are there any gangsters in Gotham? Why doesn't he just say he'll raze the city to the ground? The people in the tavern burst into laughter, and some even made a nuclear explosion gesture. The next day, Roy's speech made headlines in major newspapers on the East Coast and even across the United States. Keep in mind that this was no longer the era of Prohibition. The mafia was mostly scattered and fragmented, and gang culture had largely lost its former glory. At this point, if a mayor were to jump out and say, "I am a gangster, I am the mafia, I not only admit that I am a gangster, but I also say that I will make money with the gang," it would naturally attract condemnation from major media outlets. The Metropolitan Daily News described it as a horrifying regression, and the Global Times called Roy a vulgar and barbaric villain. In any case, the name Gangster Mayor Roy Brown became known throughout the United States almost overnight. What's somewhat strange is that several cities have tacitly remained silent on the matter, and some of their leaders have even deliberately suppressed public opinion, displaying an ambiguous attitude. These include the East Coast cities that Roy mentioned. In fact, every city whose pillar industry relies on illegal activities knows that Roy was telling the truth. These cities all have similar histories, and the gangs arose from historical issues, either to fight against immigrants or as a legacy of the Prohibition era. Most people in these cities felt relieved by Roy's outburst, because no matter who it was, all they did every day was give orders and urge things on, without taking any real action to improve the terrible situation in these cities, apart from verbal condemnation and warnings. Most people will just say condescendingly and with a sense of superiority that people born in these places are born bad, and that it is their evil that created these crime capitals. But in reality, the economic situation is the root cause of all this. Apart from Gotham being a slightly special case, most of the other gang cities have become what they are today because of the high unemployment rate brought about by economic recession. People living in this environment are born gangsters. If you want to use a law to eliminate gangs, you might as well just use a nuclear bomb to flatten these cities. In these crime capitals, led by Gotham, many gang leaders are extremely dissatisfied. They say, "We're already risking our lives for money, and it's not easy for us. These people who don't understand the situation keep criticizing us, which makes it even harder to attract investment and further worsens the economy." In the past, gangs also felt that they were in the wrong. After all, illegal businesses were indeed not respectable. But now, Roy's speech reminded them of one thing. They are not the ones primarily responsible for how these cities have become what they are today. Putting aside historical reasons, the inaction of the state government and Congress is also the main reason why the current situation has not improved. "I was born here and I have nowhere to go. If I join a gang, you'll call me a villain. I yearn for the light, but verbal condemnation and policing laws won't give me bread. If I don't join a gang, will I just starve to death? Why can't I rot? I will rot." The most important effect of Roy's speech was that it gave these poorly educated gangsters a relatively focused guiding ideology. That their current state of being so bad was not their fault, but the fault of the world. In fact, given the current situation in Gotham, this idea isn't wrong. People born in Gotham can't choose where they're born, and once you're born in Gotham, you can only choose this hellish lifestyle, otherwise you can't survive. In this world, geniuses and superhumans are a minority. The majority are ordinary people who are powerless to change their social class. In fact, those who condemn this may not be unaware of this principle. But Roy brought this matter to the forefront and pointed out incisively that it was the inaction of various forces and the weakness and incompetence of violent law enforcement agencies that created some of the cities with the highest crime rates in the United States. This was undoubtedly like tearing off the last fig leaf of those politicians. This speech naturally caused a huge backlash in the orderly society. The state government legislators who had been bought off by the Wayne Group were also unable to withstand the pressure. The state government ordered the mayor of Gotham City to be suspended from his duties for investigation and planned to restart the mayoral election process. In the past, this process in Gotham was just a formality. Basically, whoever Wayne said was in charge, and the gangs didn't care because the mayor of Gotham City didn't actually have much power, and the gangs wouldn't listen to the mayor anyway, so it didn't matter who was in charge. However, the state government felt that Roy had gone too far this time, and even the federal government had issued a reprimand, saying that while they might be bad, they couldn't be so self-righteous and make them lose face. So they planned to hold another mayoral election. This is a tactic they often use to quell similar troubles. By restarting the election process and ensuring that the person who made the mistake suffers a crushing defeat in the new election, thus proving that their views are not in line with public opinion, they can naturally quell most of the public opinion and the anger from their superiors. In past experience, This tactic has proven to be consistently effective. Until the state legislators saw that the first-ranked candidate among the new candidates was named Carmine Falcone. Chapter 107 Gotham's Longjong Dialogue, Part 2. When the staff reviewing the election candidates saw the name on the first page of the documents submitted by Gotham, they almost threw the documents away. Is Gotham's old godfather planning to enter politics? Of course, calmly speaking, it's not impossible. To put it this way, Falcone's age is a bit old for a gang leader, but that's because gangs change very quickly, and very few gang leaders can hold the position for so many years, which makes Falcone seem very special. However, when it comes to politics, there are plenty of people like Falcone at his age. The average age in Parliament is now over 50, and there are many politicians in their 70s and 80s. If Falcone wants to enter politics now, it's not too late because his starting point is already much higher than others, and he is not starting from scratch. At the very least, if he wants to become the mayor of Gotham City and then a state legislator for New Jersey, then no one can stop him. If Wayne Group is willing to continue helping him run for office after becoming a state legislator, it is not impossible for him to enter Congress or even take another step forward. However, this mayoral election was originally intended to teach Roy a lesson for his gangster-style mayoral speech. Now, if Falcone runs for and wins the election, becoming the mayor of Gotham City, it would be like trying to release a mudfish only to catch a great white shark. The state legislators believed that Falcone wouldn't make such arrogant remarks as his godson, but the problem was that it would have been better to make such arrogant remarks. A verbally strong player might be annoying, but the number one player in the national server is deadly. If Falcone were to become mayor, he would have control over both the surface and underground world of Gotham City. Countless people have risked their lives to prove just how difficult the old godfather was to deal with. State legislators were forced to frantically call Falcone's estate, only to be told, to their relief, that the old godfather seemed to be merely offering support for his godson and had no real intention of running for office. The godfather's own son, Falcone Jr., told them that his father was old and had already begun his retirement, with no intention of entering politics. This news undoubtedly relieved everyone. After all, Roy becoming mayor might be a minor matter, but if Falcone were to enter politics, it would be an unimaginable path. As a result of this incident, state legislators have had to intensify their vetting of Gotham mayoral candidates. Then they discovered that finding a truly capable mayor among these candidates was almost as difficult as finding gold in the shit. Anyone with a sound mind knows that being mayor of Gotham is a short-lived career, so it goes without saying what kind of people would sign up. Of the 23 applications submitted, 19 were from well-known gang leaders in Gotham, 3 of the remaining 4 were from minors, the youngest being 6 years old, and the last one was from a cat owned by the Gotham Golden Cup Bar. What's even more ridiculous is that, out of all the information, only this cat filled in all the details completely. The vast majority of the others, well, they couldn't write anything without 2 bottles of vodka. The state legislators are having a real headache trying to find a candidate who can actually become mayor from all this information. First of all, even if they can pick one out, it's questionable whether that person can even understand the voting rules. Secondly, if he is actually elected, whether he will hurl even harsher insults than Roy is an even bigger question. Most importantly, if they were to elect one of them, and the other gang families who had a grudge against them felt that the election was rigged, then their fate would certainly be to be shot 8 times in the back and commit suicide. As it turns out, Gotham is a complete mess, and anyone who gets even remotely connected to the city is doomed. The state legislators are now in a very difficult situation. Those who have the option are unwilling to come, and those who are willing to come cannot be chosen. What other options are there? After much deliberation, the state legislators realized that it might be better to let Roy continue serving. Think about it, Roy didn't use more than 10 swear words in his entire speech, but those candidates, in their short 300-word application reasons, conservatively used more than 100 swear words. If any of them were to become mayor, I'm afraid all the members of Congress would be in trouble. Left with no other option, the election became a mere formality once again. From the suspension of the vetting process to Roy becoming a candidate again, to the announcement of the voting results, and his re-election as mayor, the entire process took less than a week. This will have a huge impact. These gang leaders in the city were really fed up. They were fed up with those reporters and commentators who talked big without any real understanding of the situation. When it came to criticizing people, these gang leaders, who had been around the block since childhood, had never been afraid of anyone. The first to criticize were not the coastal cities near Gotham, but Detroit. If we're talking about the most tragic city in the history of modern industrial development, we have to mention Detroit. Between 1960 and 1970, the oil crisis caused devastating losses to the auto industry. Detroit, the Motor City, was transformed overnight from a prosperous industrial metropolis into a mess of displaced people and rampant gangs. Because Detroit's economic decline was so rapid, it didn't even last a generation. The people who are still alive today have witnessed how this once prosperous city went down the drain. They are practically living evidence of Roy's theory. When Detroit fell, there was no savior. The ordinary people who lost their order overnight were plunged into hell almost instantly. Racial conflicts, riots, and shootings erupted. The flashes of gunfire that broke out in Detroit's nights were as bright as the lights of the once prosperous factories, burning all night long. In short, government officials, gang leaders, and civilian representatives all stood up to condemn the other side, then joined forces to criticize those insensitive commentators, directing their attacks at Congress. Schiller was somewhat surprised by the strong reaction. He had tried his best to remove some radical arguments and avoid certain sensitive topics in the draft he gave to Roy. The purpose of this speech was actually to pave the way for future city alliances and industrial transformation and upgrading. Simply put, if you want to fight a war, you must first raise the flag. It was to provide a plausible excuse for these crime-ridden cities in similar circumstances to unite. Since our failures aren't our fault, what's wrong with us teaming up to make money? But Schiller did not realize that this actually pinpointed the biggest predicament of economic development in the eastern United States during that era. The economic crisis cycle caused by the fundamental contradictions of the system leads to wave after wave of unemployment. Since the unemployed cannot be effectively controlled and dealt with, they will spontaneously form associations, which will eventually turn into organizations such as gangs. The existence of gangs seriously threatens local security, making it impossible for investors to develop in a safe environment. This leads to the withdrawal of investment, and new investors are unwilling to come due to the city's bad reputation, resulting in a further economic decline, increasing unemployment, and more rampant gangs. The thriving maritime trade on the East Coast naturally provided fertile ground for the development of illegal industries. Once gangs flourished, all sorts of illegal industries naturally followed suit. The rise of illegal industries will instinctively exclude legitimate industries, which will further hinder the development of legitimate industries, thus plunging the city into an endless cycle of darkness. Most cities don't have a powerful figure like Falcone who can find a way to establish an evil order through extreme violence in an increasingly vicious cycle, and then generate profits through this order to benefit the entire social structure itself. Therefore, most of these cities cannot be like Gotham, which is evil yet rich. Most of them are chaotic and poor, teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. The resentment of the people in these cities is definitely much greater than that in Gotham. After all, Gotham ranks among the top cities in the United States in terms of infrastructure, population density, and living conditions. Apart from the somewhat strange weather and ecosystem, it is actually a very modern and prosperous metropolis. But this is not the case for post-industrial cities like Detroit. The rapid development of the automobile industry has led to an imbalance in industry and a backwardness in other urban infrastructure and the human environment. People have discovered that when they had money, this wasn't a problem, but now that they don't have money, this backwardness brings all sorts of troubles and makes their lives worse. While not as good as some, it's better than others. Schiller's speech, written from the perspective of Gotham and Chicago, still has a bit of a Versailles feel to it. Chicago and Gotham are already among the best in this type of city, and even Detroit is considered pretty good. At least it had its glory days and most people still have some savings. Smaller cities are in a much tougher situation. Almost overnight, the situation in major cities on the East Coast became somewhat turbulent. They felt that what the gangster mayor said made a lot of sense. If no one came to save us, then we would find a way to save ourselves. To Schiller's surprise, his initial cooperation with Gotham and Chicago, which was part of the Gotham-Chicago-Miami triad, was quite successful. However, before he could move on to the next step, namely connecting with Miami, gangs from another city, namely Imperial City, came knocking on his door. Emperor City is a city unique to DC Comics, the hometown of the superhero Paul the Hunter, and a major city on the East Coast. Of course, the situation in Imperial City is much better than in Gotham. There is still basic order here, and gangs are part of the city but not the whole of it. But like all other East Coast cities, the black market is a major source of income here. Though the city is most famous for its tourism and casinos, the Imperial City is a scenic and pleasant city with a long history of gambling. Casinos of all sizes have become part of the tourism industry. In recent years, its economy has developed very well, and it has made steady progress even when most cities are going against the tide. The mayor of Emperor City also has an ambiguous relationship with the city's largest gang. After all, It's almost impossible for a casino to operate without connections to gangsters. On his second day back in office, Roy received a call from the mayor of Imperial City. During the phone call, they exchanged views on the friendly exchanges between Gotham and Chicago, and both sides put forward their views on the future development of their respective cities, reaching a preliminary consensus. The two mayors, both deeply concerned for the citizens, reflected on the painful history of the East Coast port city while also envisioning a prosperous future. Both expressed their wishes for a bright future of cooperation and mutual benefit. Roy will also be traveling to Imperial City next month to investigate and visit, to see if there's anything Gotham can learn from it. Upon hearing the news, the 12 families all expressed that everyone has a responsibility to develop Gotham, and they were willing to do their part in this inspection. The gambling industry has unlimited potential and also has the foundation for developing tourism. Once the purely illegal industry becomes unworkable, gambling and tourism are the best directions for urban transformation. Chapter 108 Gotham's Longjong Strategy, Part 2. Developing Tourism in Gotham? If someone had said this to Bruce before, he would have suggested that person go to Arkham Asylum to have their brain checked. Who would be so foolish as to come to Gotham for tourism? If someone does come, they can just buy a one-way ticket since they won't need to return. But to Bruce's surprise, his friends didn't seem surprised at all, and many even supported him. Actually, Gotham's natural conditions are pretty good, right? Our latitude isn't high, it's not cold, it has a subtropical monsoon climate, there are no natural disasters like tornadoes, and we have a golden beach, the quality of which is among the best on the entire East Coast. Of course, I know the gambling industry isn't much better. Gamblers aren't any more noble than drug addicts, but it's still much better than drug trafficking, arms dealing, and smuggling dangerous goods, right? Harvey took a sip of his drink, patted Bruce on the shoulder, and said, "You haven't even graduated from college yet, so you might think the world is black and white. If Gotham is to become a better place, it has to become a better place all at once. But in reality, it's unlikely. In fact, it seems impossible for Gotham to get any better. It will either get worse or worse. However, the numerous jobs that casinos can provide can reduce unemployment. As more legitimate jobs become available, the likelihood of gang violence will decrease, and the situation will become more stable. This would be a good thing for any city, although I don't think Gotham is likely to become a normal city like Imperial City, but it would certainly be much better than it is now. But Bruce is currently in a state where he understands the principles. He is a genius and can certainly see the benefits brought about by this industrial transformation and upgrading, and even the Wayne family will benefit from it. However, he now finds it utterly absurd. Bruce's attitude toward Gotham was actually quite negative. He knew better than anyone how bad the city was, and he never expected it to develop in any positive direction. But now it seems that Gotham is not moving in a good direction, but rather on a bad path, taking a different bad path. It's like going from a dead end to a dead end. After a series of manipulations, the black has become a colorful black, transforming from the original city of sin into a gaudy city of sin. The connection between Gotham and Chicago alone has already brought about some changes to the city. As is well known, smuggled goods need to be stored in warehouses during transit. The cooperation with Chicago has greatly expanded the routes for smuggled goods, increased the quantity of smuggled goods, and thus required more warehouses for storage. To build a warehouse, you need land. Everyone wants a bigger slice of the pie, so the 12 families started a frenzied land grab, driving up the price of land in the suburbs of Gotham to double. Moreover, you can't just buy the land. Warehouses don't just appear out of thin air. To build a warehouse, you need designers to draw up plans, construction teams to build the structures, and inspectors to inspect the goods. To move the goods into the warehouse, you need people to move them and transport them. All of this adds at least several thousand jobs out of thin air. Moreover, some dangerous smuggled chemicals require special warehouses for storage, such as low-temperature warehouses. Victor never imagined he would receive 89 job offers in a single week, each one offering a dazzlingly high salary, enough to keep his wife frozen indefinitely. When he had worked himself to exhaustion after several nights of staying up late to earn extra money, and finally had to call his classmates to come to Gotham to make big money, he wondered if he had gone crazy. The sudden expansion of smuggling channels is like a huge cake, and the cake-sharing model is first come, first served. If you want to grab the biggest slice of the cake quickly, you have to build a series of supporting facilities earlier than others. After seeing this, gang leaders started to rush to build supporting facilities before other industries even began to cooperate. Gotham's docks, which hadn't been renovated for decades, have begun bustling construction again. To accommodate larger ships, they have to start considering raising funds to build a deep-water dock. And to make the dock's transshipment faster, land reclamation projects have also been put on the agenda. Moreover, you need airplanes to trade with suppliers all over the world. The mayor's office had just started to show some interest when almost all the major gangs got involved, saying that everyone has a responsibility to build Gotham and that the airport project should be handed over to them. Moreover, they soon discovered that air transport also had great potential compared to shipping. While cargo ships were certainly better for transporting bulk commodities, air transport was faster and safer for some more delicate small equipment and instruments. To transport goods by air, you need larger airports, more warehouses, and a faster internal logistics system, which in turn requires more land, more warehouse builders, and more professional managers and skilled workers. Gotham's local workforce is limited, and most of them are already members of various gangs. Gotham is now gradually shifting towards a system where jobs are filled by people waiting for them. At this point, people realized that the reason there were many positions but not enough people was not because Gotham had few people, but because they were not professional enough. Even a porter needs to learn some strength techniques, otherwise they'll be exhausted after a morning's work, and there won't be anyone available in the afternoon. Because Gotham lacks basic educational facilities, most people are street urchins before adulthood, meaning they are good for nothing and can't learn anything. The gang leader realized that the current group of people was probably beyond saving, so he decided to start with the next generation. He needed truck drivers, so he would find a way to open a driver's school. He needed air traffic controllers, so he would find a way to open an air technology training school. Even the docks needed dock workers, so he could teach them a couple of classes and send them straight to work. All minors aged 14 to under 18, stop wandering around the streets every day and go to class. Don't you know we're short-staffed right now? You know what, in a godforsaken place like Gotham, using gangster methods to spread education is very effective because in a family of 3, at least one member will be a gangster, and most of the time, both will be. Your boss is telling you that there are plenty of jobs waiting for people to do and earn money, while your kid is still wandering the streets every day, causing trouble everywhere. Most gangster parents would choose to bring their kids back, beat them up, and then send them to learn some skills. Even if they don't learn anything, it's better than them causing trouble outside. Of course, the current school model is basically just finding an open space, finding someone who knows how to speak, and having them demonstrate and explain. How much one can understand depends entirely on their comprehension, and how to apply it also relies mainly on practical experience. Can't even be considered a prototype of a school. It can only be said that it has just broken away from the medieval oral transmission education model. But having it is better than having it. The more far-sighted members of the 12 families have begun to think about what would happen if they could establish schools exclusively for their own families, train a group of professionals exclusively for their families, and serve only their families. Wouldn't that put them a whole generation ahead of the other families? If they can hire better teachers with higher salaries and train stronger professional managers, their industry will be stronger than others, and they will be able to get a bigger slice of the pie when it comes to dividing the pie. This idea was not immediately put into practice because Gotham's culture of relying on nature had persisted for decades. Gothamites had no habit of educating or being educated, and their investment in education was almost zero. They did not dare to take the risk for the time being. However, as this industry model gradually develops, they will find that the root of everything lies in education. They will realize that the large amount of money they spend on hiring technicians from other places could be used to train local residents and their own loyalists, and the rewards would not only be professional technicians but also a lot of reputational benefits. The previous generation of strong figures, including Falcone, have already seen the future in this model. The 21st century will be a century of talent cultivation. All competition, in the end, will be about who can cultivate more and stronger talents. Once this relatively advanced model was introduced, those clever people whose vision was limited by the times quickly completed everything that followed. So it was not surprising that the old godfather Falcone was the first to take the lead in wanting to open a family school. Of course, this school is not for ordinary people, but for the descendants of the Falcone family. They will study a large number of elite courses here to better manage the Falcone family's resources in the future. The members of the Falcone family all wanted their children to attend this school, because once they entered the school, it meant they were in the sight of the godfather. If they could achieve excellent results, they would likely be assigned to a better position and rise higher and further in life. The godfather's little tricks obviously couldn't be hidden from the other families. Although the school currently only has 7 students and the teaching location is just a reception room in the Falcone Manor, the other 12 families have learned nothing else over the years but copy. This Gotham strategy, proposed by Schiller, improved by Falcone, and implemented by all the Gotham gangs, astonished everyone with its remarkable results in the early stages of its implementation. People resist reform not because they resist the benefits that reform can bring, but because they resist overly radical changes in the distribution of benefits and lifestyles. When a reform doesn't actually change people's lifestyles, gangs remain gangs, no one wants to eliminate them, the 12 families remain the 12 families, no one wants to destroy them, but instead everyone unites to exchange a small investment for the right to a larger share of the pie, then everyone will feel that the reform is just a means to seize more benefits. Those who benefit from this will be compelled to continue, using their existing profits to invest even more in this reform in the hope of gaining an even larger share. More importantly, the first step taken by Gotham's Longjong plan proved one thing to everyone in Gotham: gold can be found even in muddy swamps, and the key to finding gold in the dung is not the dung itself, but the real gold. They may be rotten, but making money isn't shameful. Chapter 109: Daylight and Nightlight. Fool's Village. After winter in Gotham City, the temperature began to rise. This was a rare season in Gotham that didn't rain much. Although the weather was still gloomy and there were no sunny days, and the city was always shrouded in a thin fog, the weather was still much better than in winter. Mayor Roy's first reform measure after taking office was naturally to manage Gotham's traffic. Of course, this is not because the previous mayor died in a car accident, but because Gotham City has ushered in a new round of development through cooperation with other coastal cities. Various warehouses and supporting facilities have sprung up, and a large number of cargo ships are docked in the port, queuing up to transport goods in. But Gotham's traffic situation can only be described in one sentence. If it had even a shred of traffic rules, it wouldn't be completely devoid of them. This has led to a very troublesome situation. The cargo ships have enough capacity, and the warehouses under construction, although not perfect, can actually accommodate the goods. However, the problem lies in the route from the dock to the warehouse. The warehouses belong to different gang families, and they all need to transport goods, basically 24 hours a day. However, Gotham has no traffic rules and no one says who should go first. The way to solve this kind of thing in Gotham is naturally whoever has more guns and more bullets in their guns goes first. However, there is another problem. Although the driver is also a gang member, he is not a combatant. When the two vehicles block each other, the gang members escorting the goods start fighting, and the driver and other technicians in the vehicle will also be injured. Gotham is already severely lacking in professionals like this, and when everyone starts fighting, they don't care about anything else. In the end, both sides will be exhausted and end up in the hospital at the same time. It wasn't a big deal that they were admitted to the hospital, but their delivery truck was still blocking the road, causing a complete blockage for those who came later, making it impossible for them to move. This vicious cycle brought Gotham's transportation to a near standstill. While it wasn't a problem for most goods to wait a few days, continuing like this was simply burning through money. The costs of manpower, warehouses, ship maintenance, and penalties for delayed deliveries were driving the leaders of the 12 families crazy. Among them were many high-achieving college graduates, but Gotham was a quagmire. After living there for so many years, no one realized what the most important problem in the city was. When everyone thought about how to coordinate the relationships here, all they thought about was how to deal with other gangs and make them make way for them. But everyone wants others to make way for them, so no one gives way, and everyone gets stuck in traffic. Ultimately, Gotham is a chaotic and disorderly city. The evil order built by gangs here is still essentially disorder. Fortunately, the new mayor, Roy, was a sensible man. He didn't instruct the gang on what to do when they were at their most enraged, but instead let them fight until they completely blocked the central street, preventing anyone from leaving. Until Gotham's most important central roundabout and 4-second ring road intersections were reduced to ruins, the gangsters were completely exasperated. The money was right in front of them, but they just couldn't get it. Nobody could make the cargo ship's contents grow wings and fly to the warehouse. There were no people, no cars, and now there wasn't even a road. In the end, there was no other way but to ask the old godfather to come out of retirement. When the heads of the biggest families sat down at the negotiating table, they were all trembling with fear. Among those blocking the road were also goods from the Falcone family. The old godfather's power was as strong as ever, and the heads knew they were in the wrong, so they basically just bowed their heads and accepted the scolding in silence. The problem is now very clear. If the fighting continues, the situation will only get worse. By then, not only will the roads be gone, but the entire city will be almost gone. How will they make money then? Are they just waiting to starve to death? The situation has developed to this point, and a proper solution is indeed needed to improve traffic conditions. So, on the second Sunday after Gotham's temperature warmed up, Mayor Roy Brown gave a televised address on Gotham television. The Roy on screen wasn't wearing a trench coat and felt hat like he did in Chicago. Instead, he looked like a Gotham gangster, dressed in a suit and tie with a brooch pinned to his chest. He sat in his mayor's office and calmly said, "Dear citizens of Gotham City, I am your new mayor, Roy Brown. I believe you all already know me. The main purpose of my speech today is to advocate for everyone to obey traffic rules, and also to explain the new municipal administration that I will be implementing in Gotham. As we all know, we have worked together to get to where we are today in this historic city. And now, Gotham City is about to experience another revival, and a great opportunity for development is presented to everyone. Therefore, as mayor, I propose a new municipal policy to serve the citizens of Gotham. The name of this new policy is the Gotham Civilized City Construction Plan. The main contents of the plan are, starting tomorrow, the Gotham Traffic Civilization Day action will be implemented at Gotham's 6 major transportation hubs, 17 main roads and 22 secondary roads. During this period, professional traffic guides will be on hand to manage traffic. Drivers are urged to strictly abide by traffic rules, or they will be responsible for the consequences. The televised address ended there, and Bruce turned off the television. He suddenly had a bad feeling. As it turns out, Batman's intuition has always been accurate, or rather, Gotham's first law is, in Gotham, no matter how correct your starting point, how clever your methods, or how perfect your plans, they will eventually turn it into a complete mess. The next day, at the central roundabout in downtown Gotham City, a brightly painted sports car slowly slowed down. The person inside rolled down the window, leaned out, and whistled at a beautiful woman standing on the street. A tattooed hippie shouted, "Hey, hey chick, look over here, look at Gotham's racing kid." Before he could finish speaking, the girl turned around, threw her cigarette butt at the ground, grabbed a rifle from behind a lamppost, and fired a shot at the tire of the sports car. The loud explosion startled the 2 people in the car. Just as they were about to get angry, the girl walked over with a gun. She looked young, no more than 20 years old, with a great figure and a wild, dark complexion. She lit another cigarette and put it in her mouth. Then, she took out a small notebook from her jeans pocket, glanced at the 2 people standing dumbfounded in the car, and said, "You're the racer, right? Bipolar disorder, tension headaches, and early signs of schizophrenia. 3 months of treatment is recommended." As she spoke, she scribbled in the notebook. After she finished, she tore the piece of paper and threw it into the car. The tattooed young man picked up the paper and saw that the title read, "Arkham Psychiatric Hospital Diagnosis Report." He immediately flashed a fawning smile and said, "Excuse me, miss, I didn't know you were an intern at Arkham Asylum. How about we get another one of these? By the way, are they telling the truth? We can get a full prescription based on this diagnosis. I mean, effective medication for headaches." The girl looked him up and down again and said, "Yes. You need to go to the attending physician's office for a consultation within 3 days and wait for the ward assignment." "Can I have another one? I think I have a mental illness too," another young man shouted. The girl ignored him, took the walkie-talkie from her waist and said, "4th Avenue, 4th Avenue, a modified supercar, front left tire flat, 2 passengers. They are, who are you working for?" "East District Old Smoker. Our boss is Smoker. It's that old smoker from the East District again. Damn it. How come it's that poor bastard from the East District again? Don't those rich tycoons from the West District drive around anymore?" She had barely finished speaking when 2 men arrived on police motorcycles. One of them, dressed in a police uniform, gave a perfunctory salute and then said impatiently, "Speeding, illegal lane change, running a red light, fine of 300. After glancing at the rocket launcher hanging on their motorcycle, the young man reluctantly paid the fine. Then, another person who had come with the motorcycle walked over and said, "Hello, Dower Towing Company. Do you need towing services? Doyle, it's you? You damn bastard. What are you doing in a suit? And when did your family start a towing company?" The young man named Doyle straightened his suit and tie. It was clear that he had just bought the suit yesterday, and it didn't fit him very well. He leaned against the sports car, lit a cigarette, and said, "Don't talk nonsense. This is an ancestral business. My family has been in this business for 8 generations. Since we're acquaintances, I'll give you a 30% discount. I'll tow it to the nearest main road for 150 yuan. Only I know which main road isn't congested. You're probably rushing to the warehouse on the east side to check on the factory, right?" The young man in the car curled his lip and said, "Okay, it seems your boss really values you. assigning you this kind of work. You help me tow the car over, and the two of us will walk to Arkham to get some medicine." As they were chatting, the girl turned her head and saw a black Mercedes about to make a U-turn. She grabbed the megaphone from her waist and shouted, "Stop! You've violated traffic rules." A few seconds later, another gunshot rang out, and the police and towing company personnel didn't even need to move. They immediately closed another deal. Continuing along this street, at each intersection there are two intern doctors, who are specifically responsible for stopping cars and issuing medical certificates. They all carry walkie-talkies, and once a traffic accident is discovered, the police and towing company personnel will quickly arrive at the scene on motorcycles, issuing tickets, imposing fines, and signing towing agreements in one go. The car can be taken away from the scene in less than 10 minutes. Of course, this only applies to ordinary main roads and intersections far from the city center. In the 6 major battlefields closer to the city center, the fighting is much more intense. Bruce said to one of his bodyguards, "Go stop that red Lamborghini and tell him he took the wrong turn." Goes back and tries again. "Come back to me later to get the medical certificate. Also, where did that guy who was swearing all the time go? Drag him out and beat him up. Then say Wayne beat him up." He had barely finished speaking when there was a whoosh. Bruce took 2 steps back, and a car exploded not far in front of him. The driver scrambled out and yelled at the man holding a rocket launcher on the platform in the middle of the intersection. "Are you blind? I was going straight. He changed lanes. He took my spot. Why did you blow up my car?" Before he could finish speaking, the aftershock of the explosion seemed to have hit the car that had changed lanes as well. The hood of that car also made an explosion, and then flames suddenly burst into flames. The driver who had changed lanes scrambled out of his car, and the two were about to fight when they saw that the person on the platform had reloaded the rocket and was aiming at them. They left cursing and soon encountered a guy from a towing company. The wreckage of the 2 vehicles was quickly removed from the battlefield. "Listen up, you bunch of sons of bitches over there. Are you deaf? The next green light is our turn to go. Did you hear me? It's our turn to go. Haven't you guys watched TV? Look at what I'm holding. What's this? The Gotham Driver's Manual. See? You've already gone twice. It's our turn next time." A burly, tattooed man got out of a row of trucks across the roundabout. He was also carrying a rifle. He gave the yelling man the middle finger and said, "Is your brain filled with dog shit? If you're going to leave, go first on the East Road. Then we'll go. You'll have to wait a whole round." Bruce listened to them swearing at each other, and after a moment of intense thought, he realized that his brilliant mind couldn't find any evidence of the traffic rules that the 2 men were so confidently arguing about. He asked one of his bodyguards, "Gotham Driver's Manual? Do you even have these? Go get me one." The bodyguard said, "Yes, we do have some, but it was just reprinted yesterday, and it's a handwritten copy. Our mayor seemed to be a little drunk when he wrote this handbook." However, as he was saying this, he still went to find a car and then got a driver's manual. When Bruce opened it, he realized that what the bodyguard said was indeed true. If he had drunk less of a pound of vodka, he wouldn't have written such an outrageous driver's manual. The handwriting on it was extremely messy. This mayor was also from a humble background and had never attended university. Many words were misspelled, not to mention the grammar was all over the place. After making a mistake, he would just scribble something down with his pen. Some lines were squeezed together, while others were far apart. Bruce shut down his brain and tried to read the driver's manual from the perspective of these idiots. He found that although the handwriting was messy, the content was chaotic, and there was more profanity than actual text. It made a lot of sense. The core message of the entire driver's manual can be summed up in one sentence. There are no traffic rules in this lousy place. Nobody you see with a steering wheel here has a valid driver's license. If you want to drive here, all you need to know is to grip the steering wheel, step on the gas, and then pray to God. A while later, Bruce's phone rang. He answered. "Hello? Oh, Professor. Yes, the internship is going well. I'm at this intersection east of the central roundabout. The traffic here is pretty good, but it's more chaotic on the west side because there are too many sports cars there. Yes, I also think this internship method is great. I heard them say that they've memorized at least dozens of mental illness terms, which is already a miracle. I believe they'll get at least 5 more points on the final exam." "Evans? No, he's not directing traffic. He has more important things to do." As Bruce spoke, he looked up and saw a man in a black suit, who looked like the head of one of the 12 families, bowing and scraping to Evans in the distance. In a few quick movements, he moved the car that was blocking the road, and the traffic, which had been congested, quickly became smooth again. Although that's what Bruce said, in reality, this so-called Gotham Traffic Civilization Day was basically a complete mess. Roy built a small watchtower in the center of each major traffic hub intersection, where traffic controllers were basically armed with machine guns and rocket launchers, ready to fire wherever they were in the wrong place. Under this deterrent, the vast majority of cars are still willing to obey traffic rules. However, the problem is that Gotham does not have a unified traffic rule, and the people here have never learned traffic-yielding rules. So Roy added another person who had driven normally in other cities to the watchtower to provide guidance. However, in the United States, traffic rules differ from state to state, and drivers' manuals vary, which results in different traffic rules being used at each intersection. Although this situation is much better than the previous one where nothing could move at all, it still cannot actually meet the needs of logistics operations. In a faculty office at Gotham University, calculus professor Anna rubbed her forehead and said helplessly, "The error in the capacity calculation is really too large. Do you have any clues?" Victor looked even worse. His two huge dark circles almost covered half of his face. If you didn't listen to him speak, you would think Mr. Freeze had awakened just by looking at his current state. He said, "Don't forget, we also have to consider shelf life. The cargo ships at the second pier are carrying goods that urgently need to be stored in the warehouse. They must have an express lane, otherwise the goods may be damaged. There are also fragile items at the third pier, so we can't drive too fast. When these vehicles join the central roundabout, it will affect the overall speed." Just then, the door was pushed open with a bang, and Roy rushed in, gun in hand, saying, "How's the logistics system coming along? There are over a dozen bigwigs waiting for my news. All their goods are piling up at the dock, and I can't hold on much longer. We're doing manual calculations now. Have you ever seen anything faster done manually? They can raise the price any amount, 100,000, 200,000, as long as you can deliver results quickly. Business waits for no one." "Friends." Victor put down the documents in his hand and said, "Last night I called a few of my old classmates, all of whom are professors in mathematics, physics, and biology. You'll have to offer them a price they're satisfied with before they'll come here. You know, this city doesn't have a very good reputation. Give me their phone number, and I guarantee you'll be satisfied." On the other side, just as Roy had said, most of the heads of the 12 families were gathered in a conference room, anxiously awaiting the outcome. Seated at the head of the table was the head of the Spencer family, who held a telephone and said, "The goods in warehouse number 3 are damaged? Why, weren't they frozen perfectly fine? The temperature detection device isn't working properly? Why hasn't anyone checked it? Can't you read the gauge? Damn it, you bunch of illiterates. That's worth tens of thousands of yuan. The cryogenic chamber isn't working well either? What should we do then? What about that expert we kidnapped? No, that expert we hired at a high salary. Tell him we'll double his promised salary. Tell him to figure something out right away. Never mind. Let him answer the phone." "Who? Professor Fries? And who is that? Gotham University? No, I can't get into that place, it's the Godfather's territory. Contract work? Is he that powerful? What? A living, breathing person? His wife? No, that's not important. You mean, he froze a living person in a cryo chamber and she still managed to stay alive? Ha! Oh no, I mean, it's really such a pity, such a sad love story. God bless this poor lady. I'm willing to donate to this, and I'll invite him over tomorrow. You know, I'm a believer in love too." Meanwhile, Schiller was sitting in his office at Arkham Asylum, with a long line in front of him. Without even looking up, Schiller called out, "Next!" A burly black man walked up, clutching the diagnosis report in his hand. The report was smaller than one of his fingers. He carefully held the report and handed it to Schiller. Schiller glanced at it and said, "Congenital polio? Which student who didn't pay attention in class wrote this? Didn't I tell you to look up the term in the textbook and memorize it?" He glanced at the black man and said, "Room 3, second floor." Then he quickly scribbled a couple of lines on the diagnosis form, signed his name, wrote a prescription, handed it to the man, and continued calling out, "Next!" Just then, Brand, wearing a white coat, rushed in and said, "We can't admit any more patients. We really can't admit any more. We're out of wards. Let them squeeze in. There are still more than 100 people here. But no matter how crowded it is, there's no way a single ward can accommodate 30 people. Schiller looked up and thought for a moment, then said, "Let them be released on parole. There's always room in Gotham's prisons. Isn't there?" Brand was dumbfounded. He said, "Parole means what?" "But most of them were originally there for medical parole. Then set up a medical station in the prison and send Bruce there. An intern is still a doctor, he has experience. Let him apply the model here. If the hospital has no space, go to the prison. If the prison has no space, come to the hospital. That's it." After quickly settling the remaining patients, Schiller returned to his office at Gotham University, where chaos reigned. Everyone with a college degree or higher had been taken in for calculations. In this era without supercomputers, calculating the perfect logistics route by hand requires an enormous amount of computation, driving Victor and Anna, the leaders, nearly insane. Schiller, relying on his symbiote, also got involved. He was quite happy to get off work overtime so that he wouldn't have to deal with traffic jams on his way to and from work in the future. But soon, Roy came again, still carrying a gun and holding a phone. He rushed into the office and said, "2 of the 3 municipal government treasurers have run away from exhaustion, and the other was buried by sand leaking from a dump truck. He's still being rescued. Who's coming with me? The financial statements are piling up like a mountain." One of the Gotham professors said, "This isn't a job anyone can do. In Gotham, the mayor may not live long, but the treasurer's life isn't long either. Everyone knows what they do." Upon hearing this, Schiller was no longer sleepy. He rolled up his sleeves and said, "Let's go. I'll go with you." Roy hesitated for a moment before saying, "Excuse me for being blunt, Professor, but aren't you a psychology professor? Does psychology include a financial section?" "Of course there are. You know, psychology is all-encompassing, and I happen to have a lot of personal experience in it." Roy had no choice but to agree with some skepticism. The next morning, Roy stood before all the gang leaders and said, "Now I have good news and bad news." "Tell me the good news first. I've had enough bad news," one of them said. "I still have 3 trucks stuck on 5th Avenue. The good news is that, barring any unforeseen circumstances, the city's GDP may surpass that of the metropolitan area this year, making it the #1 city in the United States." A commotion erupted instantly below. The gang leaders whispered among themselves, saying, "How did we get to #1 so quickly? I haven't even sold any of my goods yet. Wasn't it 5th or 6th before? How long has it been? Are you sure there's nothing wrong with the statistics?" Roy waved his hand, signaling them to calm down, and then said, "The bad news is, it's not because our city has developed, but because there's something wrong with the reports. So now it's up to everyone to decide whether or not we want to be #1. The others were even more confused. Just how big of a problem could the report have been that allowed them to surpass the Metropolitan and jump straight to first place? To be honest, Roy didn't understand this problem either. Anyway, after Schiller spent the whole night compiling that pile of financial reports, he gave him a statistical report that was both extremely reasonable and extremely outrageous. Then tell him that he is about to become the mayor who leads the city's economy to the fastest growth, the most significant improvement, and the fastest pace of development in the history of urban development in the United States. Roy said, "According to a finance professional who wished to remain anonymous, if we become #1, we'll become more well-known and have more investment opportunities. If we don't become #1, Roy stammered for a moment, then took out a piece of paper and read from it. "Some errors that are permissible in the understanding of macroeconomics will give actual data more room for adjustment, including stabilizing measures for artificially inflated growth, redundancy left by the impact of the crisis, and," as Roy read on, he couldn't continue. He said, "Sorry, there are too many words I don't know in the last part. Basically, if we don't want this reputation, everyone will have more." Roy made a gesture commonly used by gangsters, and all the bosses understood immediately. They unanimously chose the latter. Of course, this is certainly not for the convenience of official money laundering. It's mainly because Gotham citizens are not vain and are humble and low-key. Meanwhile, in Gordon's office at the Gotham Police Department, Bruce was finally losing his composure. He said, "You mean you want to borrow my Batlight? What do you want to use it for?" Gordon was a little embarrassed. He said, "There was nothing we could do about it. Yesterday, some bastard had some crooked idea and actually modified the only old, dilapidated traffic light at the central intersection, causing quite a bit of trouble. Sure enough, just as the traffic was starting to improve a little, things went wrong again. Most intersections in Gotham don't have traffic lights because they weren't used before. Only the big roundabout in the very center of the city still has an old-fashioned traffic light pole. Although it hadn't worked before, Gordon discovered, under the threat of force, that this thing was indeed much more convenient than shouting. As a result, most of the traffic in the central urban area is directed by traffic lights, and the person who circled the watchtower is only responsible for military deterrence. But as expected of Gotham City, a city known for its simple and honest people, this absurd city has never lacked absurd geniuses. I wonder which physics and engineering genius went out in the dark in the middle of the night to modify this ancient traffic light that has been around for who knows how many years. Under the wrong traffic light guidance, yesterday at the central roundabout the situation was, go left, then right, go in front, then right, go behind, then right again. Throughout the day, the entire right-hand intersection remained completely clear, while the other 3 intersections were left completely blocked. The drivers in Gotham City are all suffering from severe road rage. If everyone is stuck in traffic, that's one thing, but when others are moving forward one after another while they are stuck in traffic, they are bound to be unhappy. So the central roundabout, which had just been slightly repaired, was almost reduced to ruins again. Later, the traffic light was repaired, but after so many repairs, this old-fashioned traffic light was basically no longer working. The fate of ordinary traffic lights would probably be similar to this one. During the evening rush hour, they would basically not last more than 3 hours. For the citizens of Gotham, something so inconspicuous would be hard for their somewhat deranged brains to discern. So Gordon came up with a solution. He planned to install a high-powered one. So here's the question. Where is the most powerful light in all of Gotham? Bruce looked at Gordon speechlessly. Gordon rubbed his hands together and said, "Actually, this can be considered a way to combat crime. After all, if everyone is transporting goods at night, most people won't go out looking for trouble." Gordon pulled Bruce over to the Gotham map hanging on the wall and said, "This is a statistic I recently did. You see, the crime rate has dropped significantly in the neighborhoods with better traffic, because gangs usually hire drivers who know the routes. These drivers are basically members of local gangs, the main force of local crime. Because there is a shortage of transportation capacity, the gangs are willing to pay high prices to hire these people to deliver goods for them overnight. It doesn't matter if they don't have a driver's license, since most of them don't have one anyway. They spend all night driving trucks to deliver goods, so of course they don't have much time to go out and commit crimes. Moreover, the money they earn from 2 trips is equivalent to the proceeds from 2 months of robbery. Now most gangsters who can drive have found similar jobs. I heard that a small gang has collectively switched to becoming truck drivers and is currently recruiting like crazy. Actually, this was not unexpected for Bruce. Batman had been patrolling at night recently, but there was really nothing to patrol because the streets were full of people working. Truck drivers don't rest, but they still need to eat and drink. After finishing a night shift, they can grab a late-night snack. So restaurants, bars, and roadside stalls also stay open. Restaurants need to sell their daytime offerings and then sell their nighttime offerings, which requires more raw material reserves, more drivers to deliver goods, and more cooks and waiters. However, regular restaurants have rent, so their food is more expensive, and the food prepared by the chefs may not suit the tastes of those gangsters who have been eating street food since they were young. So many people who know how to cook have set up roadside stalls. Gotham doesn't have any city management officials, so they can set up their stalls wherever they want. With the proliferation of roadside stalls, the already narrow alleys have become even narrower, forcing most people to demolish illegal structures in front of their buildings and widen the roads to facilitate the formation of night markets. These night shift drivers suddenly made a lot of money, so of course they became enthusiastic about spending it. Casinos and dance halls simply stopped taking breaks, and bartenders, dancers, and dealers also had to work all night. These people needed more service industry facilities for eating, drinking, and relieving themselves. In short, the streets near each transportation hub have been brightly lit and busier than during the day for the past few days. When Gotham residents gather together, they try to find ways to get excited and engage in competitive sports. In this era, there are no video games, so the ways to get excited are nothing more than playing basketball, soccer, or gathering to brag. Who is Batman? He is the Dark Knight of Gotham, the emphasis being on darkness. Imagine you've walked into an alleyway near the main road. At the beginning, you'll find a group of amateur soccer players shouting and yelling, and at the end, a group of truck drivers sitting on stools around a table, eating and talking nonsense. The entire street is crisscrossed with electrical wires, various strings of lights are hung between streetlights and lampposts, and high-powered spotlights are suspended in mid-air, illuminating the ground. Batman, who has just landed from the dimly lit rooftop, is stunned by the glare. Because the streets near these transportation hubs were too crowded, Batman had little room to maneuver, so he headed towards more secluded and less crowded streets. However, the commercial clusters bring not only urban prosperity but also population movement. Even the most vulnerable groups in Gotham, such as single mothers with children, can find jobs as waitresses or dishwashers in restaurants that are open all night. Strong laborers usually go to do jobs that pay better. Restaurants are short-staffed and would love for more people to do this kind of work. The people of Gotham City are not isolated. Basically, there is contact between groups. One person tells 10, 10 tell 100. Many disadvantaged groups living in more remote and distant areas will find a bustling night market nearby to do odd jobs. Even if it's just picking up trash, they can earn $1 or $2, enough for a meal. However, because their homes and workplaces are far apart, which would interfere with their work schedules, most of them move to places closer to home. The rent for houses near such places will be more expensive, but landlords aren't stupid. Originally, he could charge $100 for renting a room to one person, but now he can divide the room into 3 and rent each room to 3 people for $50, making an extra $50. Those people will be grateful to him. As a result, many landlords in the night market streets began to subdivide their houses into smaller units. The vulnerable groups did not care how small or dilapidated their rooms were, since they were no worse than where they originally lived. Then the gangs that managed and ruled the street discovered that if they could create more of these rooms, they could attract more outsiders, improve the efficiency of the entire street, and collect more protection money. So they began to proactively convert the lofts or vacant rooms in their properties into smaller apartments, specifically for outsiders attracted by the properties. Some poor people really don't have a single penny, and the gangsters allow them to move in first and then pay off their debts every month. Some gangsters who urgently need people don't even charge interest. They waive all rent for the first period after moving in. As long as you work for them on this street, they not only won't charge you interest, but they'll also give you subsidies. Anyway, they're not making money off your meager rent. Then Batman discovers that Gotham has become eerily quiet lately, and new commercial districts are gradually developing, radiating outwards from the transportation hubs and various night markets. In these new business districts, few people cause trouble because in the past, if you killed 2 people in a dark alley, the police might not find out for a long time. In fact, if you had some special skills, it might become an unsolved case. However, in such a bustling night market, such a thing is almost impossible. Even when playing football, if someone kicks someone else, the news will spread throughout the entire neighborhood the next day. If you were to rob someone on the spot, you'd better hope the police arrive quickly. Otherwise, the local gangsters will definitely shove you into the sewers. If you commit murder in the street, it takes time to cover it up, right? When the police come to investigate, you have to cooperate with their investigation, and all the eyewitnesses in the vicinity have to be summoned in turn. How much time will that waste? How much revenue will you lose? How much protection money will you lose? If you're far away, the gang might not bother with you. But at this close range, with a dozen or so gangsters patrolling the street, you might end up with a dozen or so holes in your body before you even utter the word robbery. Doing business is one thing, but Gotham's tradition of firing first and then questioning is still something they can't abandon. And so, in one dark night after another, Batman stood alone on the rooftop, watching those once dimly lit nights slowly begin to be lit up. Now, he stood on the rooftop of Wayne Tower, the very center and highest point of Gotham, with thousands of lights shining below him. He thought that perhaps he had witnessed a miracle so closely. This hopeless, chaotic, and terrible city began to sprout and grow amidst the chaos, and then bloom into a strange and bizarre flower. It bloomed wildly in the darkness, making no attempt to conceal its chaos and malice. Batman thought that this black flower would still open towards the sun. Only a black sun. But he, Batman, did not feel defeated. A new power surged within him, a new idea, an idea broader than the night and revenge, appeared in his mind for the first time. He had a strange premonition that this world, this universe, just like Gotham, was changing for some reason. And next time, he thought, he would no longer be a bystander in such a miraculous change, but a participant. He watched as night fell once again, and one by one the lights gradually came on. Then, apart from the cold wind and darkness above, the twinkling lights began to spread rapidly across the streets until they illuminated the entire city. Right here, right now, this solitary bat standing above the city felt it had finally learned how to light a lamp. Chapter 110: The Cat's Suicide Attempt. In the theater in Gotham City, Schiller took a glass of champagne from the waiter's tray, clinked glasses with Mrs. Leto, and sighed. There aren't many balls like this anymore. So lively yet dignified. The balls in the city are just too noisy. The sound systems give me a headache. Mrs. Leto stroked the white hair at her temples and said, "That's how it was in our time. Young men and women were usually very shy, and no one dared to hold hands at a ball like this. But these young people nowadays are so wild. Once I went to the Golden Cup Mansion in the city center, and I was simply stunned. What they were wearing was more like curtains than clothes." Schiller laughed and said, "After all, things are developing too fast now, but that's a good thing. The economy seems to be doing quite well lately." Mrs. Leto agreed, saying, "That's true. The rent for my 2 apartments on 4th Avenue has increased by more than half. I don't know how those gangsters make money. I'm still talking to that bull on Elizabeth Avenue about buying another apartment building." "Madam, you are wise." A deep voice came from the side, and a man with a small mustache walked over. He gently touched Schiller and Mrs. Leto's glasses with his wine glass, and then said, "Hello, this is my business card." Schiller took it and looked at it. He said, "Golden Cup Company manager? You're a real estate agent for the Falcone family." "Yes, I work for the Godfather, but of course, our Golden Cup Company is also a legitimate company independent of the Falcone family, with real estate operations throughout the East Coast. As you know, we've recently been working with Chicago, and land there is about to be speculated on. I've come to this gathering specifically to introduce real estate in various eastern cities to you wealthy gentlemen and ladies." Mrs. Leto was quite interested. She said, "I've heard that Chicago has better scenery than Gotham. What do you think about me buying a villa there?" "You must be Mrs. Leto? You've come to the right person. Chicago is indeed nice, but if you're looking for a retirement home, I'd recommend Imperial City. The scenery there is absolutely stunning, unique on the entire East Coast. And, as you know, it's much safer there than Gotham or Chicago. Although I really like the tropical vibe of the Imperial City, there are too many casinos and too many tourists. I always feel that I wouldn't have any peace and quiet if I stayed there," Mrs. Leto said, frowning. "Then I would recommend Miami to you. This city is really nice. Compared to the Order of Imperial City, it has a wilder beauty. Of course, the gangs there are nothing compared to Gotham's. With your husband's abilities, buying a manor there should be a good idea." Mrs. Leto fanned herself with her fan and said, "I was just about to discuss this with him. Although we've lived in Gotham for generations, the weather here is just awful. It would be nice to go there for a month or 2 of vacation. After all, we're getting old, and the air in Gotham is really bad for longevity." Schiller said, "I've heard that the mayor intends to work with Wayne Enterprises to develop an urban air purification system and roll it out nationwide, which could regulate the climate in local areas. But that could certainly take some time." The manager of the Golden Cup said, "That would be wonderful. Actually, I don't understand it either. Gotham's location is so good. So why are there so many rainy days? If there were 3 or 4 months of sunny days a year, the beaches here would drive tourists all over the East crazy." The manager is right. Gotham Beach is of very high quality because it has hardly been developed. After all, no one would be reckless enough to come here for a vacation. Apart from locals using it occasionally, it is arguably the best preserved urban beach in the entire eastern city. The waiter came over with a tray again and circled around. The group took some cookies, drank and ate, and chatted about the future of Gotham. During the conversation, Schiller noticed a dark figure flash outside the theater door, as if someone was watching him. The theater was brightly lit because of the ball, but the manor was pitch black. This old-fashioned manor community was not large and had few residents. When a ball was held, almost everyone would be there, leaving their houses empty. Unlike Bruce, who is busy with his internship, Catwoman has been having a tough time lately. She was a thief and her main source of income was stealing. Of course, she was a high-end thief, not a street pickpocket. Catwoman mainly stole expensive jewelry from jewelry stores, or stamps and art books from collectors. However, due to Gotham's reforms, the city's nights became increasingly lively. Jewelry stores, gold and silver shops, and watch repair shops on the main streets began to open at night, and the staff and security guards started working in 3 shifts. Catwoman steals things through stealth and skill, not like some beat-up heroes who kill everyone and no one will notice their infiltration. Catwoman's petite size and strength don't support her taking that route. The 3-shift system of shop assistants and security guards also gave her a lot of headaches. Even if she could find a way to distract 1 or 2 of them, the noisy streets and bustling alleys made her thefts very easy to be discovered. Logically speaking, with all her skills, Catwoman could have done something else and wouldn't have starved to death. However, she was raised to be a thief from a young age, so she neither knew how nor had ever thought of doing anything else. What if she couldn't steal? She had no choice but to bite the bullet and steal anyway. Although she could occasionally succeed, it was too easy to be discovered, which made her many enemies. As the saying goes, if you walk the dark road too often, you'll eventually encounter a ghost. One day, Catwoman's theft failed once again. However, this time, she messed with someone she shouldn't have. The place she stole from was called the Golden Cup Jewelry Store, which was owned by Falcone. The Falcone family is not like those other small fry. Their security guards are professionally trained and well-staffed, leaving no blind spots in the store. The moment Catwoman made a move, she was discovered. Unlike other jewelry stores, Falcone's men have the guts and the ability to hunt down anyone in Gotham. The Godfather's authority cannot be tarnished. Catwoman was not only nearly captured, but was also put on the wanted list. All 12 families sent people to chase her. On this day, the Catwoman was being chased so hard that she had no choice but to run towards the edge of the city. The assassins behind her were clearly professionally trained and were giving her a tight chase. Catwoman had no choice but to steal a car and drive out of the East End towards the West End. Thanks to Gotham's traffic control, there were no traffic jams or accidents, and she successfully reached the vicinity of the Manor area. Upon entering the Manor area, Catwoman felt a little apprehensive, because the English manor here appeared extremely eerie and terrifying under the cover of night. This was why, even though there were many wealthy people here, she rarely came here. But there was nothing she could do. Her enemies were right behind her. Catwoman cautiously advanced through the manor area. The deeper she went, the more uncertain she felt, because somehow, it seemed like everyone had disappeared. Catwoman mustered her courage and continued running forward, and then she discovered a faint light shining from a window in one of the manor houses. The Catwoman, almost frightened to the point of having her fur standing on end by the terrifying atmosphere, didn't think too much and headed straight for the light. Once inside, she noticed signs that people lived there, which put her at ease. Feeling as if she had shaken off her pursuers, Catwoman grew bolder. She tiptoed to the base of the building, then extended her grappling hook to grab the rooftop. With a few light leaps, she landed on the windowsill where the light shone. She pressed herself against the wall and peered inside, only to find no one there. It seemed the owner had forgotten to turn off the lights before leaving. Next to the balcony was a solid wood desk covered with a jumble of documents, including many thick volumes that would give any Catwoman a headache at first glance. The owner of the manor seemed to be a scholar. However, something soon caught the Catwoman's attention. A bottle placed in the corner of the desk. The bottle wasn't big, and it seemed to contain some black, dirty water, but the material of the bottle itself made Catwoman's heart race instantly. Those are diamonds. The whole thing is diamonds. The entire bottle is made of diamonds. Catwoman knew she couldn't be mistaken. After so many years as a thief, she had seen thousands upon thousands of jewels. The dazzling light under the lamp almost blinded Catwoman, captivating her instantly. Even though she had seen all kinds of beautiful jewelry, she had never seen such a pure diamond. Then she began to grit her teeth. What was the owner of this estate thinking? Why hollow out such a beautiful diamond and turn it into a bottle? Wouldn't it have been so much better if it were solid? But regardless, Catwoman's heart, which belonged to the jewel thief, was already stirring. The window was locked, and it seemed to be locked with a lock that Catwoman couldn't understand or pick. But this notorious jewel thief who had dominated Gotham for years was no pushover either. Seeing that the window was locked, she climbed down the balcony and tried every window. She then discovered that the owner of the manor was ridiculously cautious. All the windows were locked with strange locks, including the small windows in the attic. But hard work pays off. Old-style English manors have a special structure. In medieval English manors, there would be a hidden door at the drain of the toilet, which was used by servants to clean up the accumulated filth. Although this manor, built here, no longer needed this function in its time, as it uses a modern drainage system, this medieval sewage channel was preserved, perhaps out of the architect's sentiment. Catwoman was petite, just the right size to crawl through the hidden door into the bathroom. She thought to herself, thank goodness no one had ever used this passage before, otherwise she would never have crawled in through it. Catwoman's acrobatic skills were superb and she was very agile. When she crawled out of the bathroom, she landed without making a sound. What made her even more frightened was that the bathroom door was locked. How afraid is this person of being robbed? Fortunately, the owner of the manor probably also found those strange locks troublesome, as they might not be able to open them if needed in a hurry. So the lock on the bathroom door was just a very ordinary iron padlock. Catwoman could pick this lock. She did it in no time and then tiptoed to the table. She excitedly picked up the diamond bottle and examined it closely under the light. Now she was certain that it was indeed a diamond. What puzzled her was that she had never seen such a pure diamond before. Its color and clarity were almost impeccable, and it looked nearly perfect. What puzzled Catwoman even more was that such a beautiful bottle contained a pool of black, dirty water. Or perhaps dirty water wasn't quite accurate. It was more like a sticky, gooey black slime. Whether it was Catwoman's imagination or not, she felt the slime move slightly, but she was already dazzled by the diamond bottle and couldn't wait to put such a beautiful diamond into her collection cabinet. So she didn't pay attention to what was in the bottle and simply stuffed it into the small bag at her waist. With the windows and doors locked, Catwoman worried that she wouldn't be able to escape when the manor owner returned. Besides, she had already gotten enough of the beautiful diamonds for tonight. Catwoman left along the route she had come from, and before leaving, she even used a special method to hang the padlock on the outside of the bathroom door and lock it back up. Back at home, the Catwoman took out the bottle and looked at it from left to right. The more she looked at it, the more she liked it. But the more she looked at it, the more annoyed she became by the clump of black sludge inside. What kind of madman would use such a beautiful bottle to hold a puddle of sticky black slime? Catwoman wanted to empty the contents of the bottle, but the bottle's seal was very unusual. Its stopper wasn't a typical wooden stopper. It had a series of complex latches and what appeared to be a tiny lock. The tech-savvy Catwoman had never seen this thing before, and she didn't understand it, but she knew one thing. Diamonds are the hardest gemstones in the world, so she could simply use force to break the stopper without damaging the beautiful bottle. So she took a crowbar, a file, and pliers and started hammering and banging on the mechanism. After working on it for a long time, the stopper remained firmly in place, except for one of the clips which was slightly loose. The Catwoman was panting heavily from exhaustion. In a fit of anger, she didn't care anymore and threw the bottle on the bedside table before going to sleep. She planned to wait a few days until things calmed down before going out to find a professional to help her pry it open.